Welcome back to the kitchen build thing. We're getting back to the island this time, which gets me pretty excited because it's a little more in the woodworking furniture making space than all the rest of the cabinetry. So I'm excited to be back in the realm of wood and grain and whatnot, like we've had for the rest of the island mini series, I guess, contained within the bigger series. So we're going to be working on this face here. We got 4 drawers. Well, technically this is a drawer, but it will look like a door front. And I want to do something a little different on these drawers than I did on the rest of them. So on the rest of the drawers, since we have a painted front and a wood interior, the front and the drawer box are 2 separate pieces. But since the front and the box of the drawers and the island are going to be the same thing, they're both going to be white oak, what I want to do is make an integral front, so the front of the actual drawer box is the actual face you see on the drawer. And I think it'll be fairly straightforward to do this. I've never done this. We'll see how it goes, but I think all I really need to do is just create these rabbets, the step between the front and the sides on the side and the bottom. This step here, just rabbet that into the stock for the drawer front, and then I'll just have rabbeted sides, just like I would if I was doing like an overlay drawer that I would normally do. So it shouldn't be too crazy. It's basically just like the high boy drawers. We'll have a little stepped rabbet thing there, and I won't need quite this much material. What I think I want to do is have the same sort of thickness here, 5/8, and then have maybe at least 3/8 of material in the front. So ideally my drawer front material would be 1 inch thick. So here is the chunk of wood I'm going to try and get all of these drawer fronts out of. This is an offcut from making the rest of the island, and it's not really, this knot isn't quite what I was having in mind, but like with the end panels, that knot was also kind of like a weird thing that I wasn't too sure of, but it worked out really well. So we're gonna see this through and see how this looks before I go cutting up another slab that might be a little bit more what I had in mind. So this is going to be a continuous grain and book match unfolding situation. So I will get the wider drawer fronts from down here, resaw them in half, and they'll open up, and we'll have this kind of like fun swirly grain that's mirrored from the bottom drawer to the middle drawer, and then to the top drawer that will be continuous into this knot. That is the left bank. And then for the right bank, we just have the upper drawer. So we'll take this guy, flip it this way, and we'll have a book match end to end over here. So there's going to be a little bit of fun symmetry and a continuous grain going on, and we'll kind of see how it works out with this this knot. This is the side closest to the edge. This limb is growing kind of like this, so it actually it's 9 inches from the edge here, but on the other face it's actually at I think 11. No, it's further. It's at 12. No. What's it at? 11. It's at 11 off the edge. So as we're thinking about this too, we're going to be looking at the halfway point. So this knot is going to move in this direction, and the center point is going to be over here. So it's going to shift this way. It's one of those things like when you're looking at this stuff, and I've said this a lot, when you're laying out parts on slab wood like this, you're really thinking in 3 dimensions, and you have to kind of envision what the grain is going to be doing when you get halfway through or wherever you're at. If you're doing a half resaw, if you're doing thirds, if you're doing quarters, that movement's going to be there. So you can, the more you do this, the more you can kind of learn to anticipate what's going to actually be presented on the faces you're going to be using, because it'll be book matching. So the inside face that we're going to be resawing is going to be the show side. This will be the inside, and then the back side of this will be the inside as well. So it gets kind of, you know, a little bit different, but there's a lot of cool things going on here. I think this might work out, you know, just fine. The only one little caveat is that this is kind of thin. I only cut this slab, I think, at like 8/4, so we've only got 2 1/16 of thickness right now. I'm not going to get a 1 inch thick drawer front from this. It'll be thinner, so I'll have to kind of play around with the rabbets to see what looks good, but I'm not super duper worried about that right now. I just want to open this thing up and see where we go. before I start flattening these, I want to just trim the ends a little bit to get them a little shorter. You can see that on this end there is basically a large bow right here. So the more I can shrink this up, the more this will touch the surface and the less material I'll remove in the flattening process, giving us the thickest material possible. So to do that, I'm over length. I want to know how much I'm going to want to trim off of this end to bring this whole side down. So what I want to have happen is that when I open up the book match for the 16-inch drawer, which goes above the door, I don't want the knot to be in there. So it's going to be how much of this is going to get cut off of that other drawer. So I want the drawer front to start after the knot kind of ends. So right around here. So I know the starting point of that drawer is going to be there. So the other end of that, 25 inches, is the rest of the drawers, which means that I can trim right around there and cut about 2.5 inches off the end or so, which will drop this side down and preserve more material thickness through the flattening process. So after a little bit of cleanup, here's what we're left with. There's a lot of interesting unique grain and figure up in here, so I think it's going to work out really nicely. I didn't bother completely cleaning everything up because this is going to be the inside face of the drawer. I don't really need it to be perfectly flat and smooth because it's the inside of the drawer. That's the same on both faces, so now these things can go and get resawn into 2 pieces. And since I don't have a whole lot of margin of error in my thickness, I'm going to put a new blade here on the bandsaw. And I always get questions about these blades, so I thought we would cover that real quick. This is a carbide tip blade for the bandsaw. And you know, just like the sawmill, apparently I'm missing a bolt for that. That's cool. And just like on the sawmill, these last quite a bit longer than any normal standard blade. So I went back in my email, in my looking for all my orders from when the heck was the last time I had bought one of these blades. And it looks like the last time I bought a blade, so this blade here, got installed after I built the High Boy. That would have been in 2018 when I shot the machine maintenance video. So as far as I can tell, this blade has been on this saw continuously for, what's that, 6 years? Which seems like a lot, but I know it's changed since I moved here, and I've been here 4 years already. So I guess that's probably accurate. Now what happens with these blades is they don't really get dull so much as they just lose their finesse ability. So I know with that blade, you know, we just used it. It's cutting through things just fine, but as the blades wear, their cut quality decreases, so you get more of a rougher cut, and their ability to track nice and straight also kind of diminishes as well. So on those first cuts there, when I was ripping, that blade likes to kind of hook out and then find its way into the cut, so you get this weird like hump at the beginning of the cut. But other than that, the blade still cuts, so it's not like it's trash, but if you're doing anything rough or something, you can just put that blade on. But I have a couple of those already because that's always what happens. And let's see what else. I don't change blades. This blade is the only blade that stays on the saw. Resawing cuts, so straight cuts, joinery cuts, curved cuts. Half-inch blade, which is what this is, does kind of everything for me, and then I'm not changing blades all the time for, various things. I can do that because I'm cutting things that have really tight curves. I don't really ever need both sides of the thing I'm cutting, so I can make all the relief cuts I want. So the waste side becomes like a true waste side because it's not like a nice curvy piece. It's all chopped up, but I don't really make like, what is this, 2.5-inch radius is what I can do with this. A 2.5-inch radius. It's not very often that I cut a radius tighter than 2.5 inches, so this works just fine. So there's the new blade on there. And I'm ready to do my resawing. And also cost-wise, so these blades, well, this last one I bought was $160. Now they've gone up to $203. This is a 111-inch long blade. That is the same cost as the carbide sawmill blades, which are nearly 26 feet long and 1.5 inches wide. They're basically the same cost. They were $160, and now they're like $200 for the sawmill. So these are basically the same price as a sawmill blade. And I almost forgot, for those of you who want to know what kind of blade it is, it's a Lennox TriMaster. That's a 1/2 inch and it's 3 TPI. And that's where it's made. Interestingly, that blade has like a snaggle tooth or something because it's extremely rough of a cut, which is, I guess, fine since we're just doing a resaw. This is on a finished surface, but it's tracking like a laser. It's perfect, so I'm happy. It's just weird. Maybe let's look. Maybe the weld's off or something. Let me see. It's definitely whipping through there. There's the weld. I mean, I don't think it's any more out than what you would normally find. I don't know. Maybe there's some weird tooth somewhere. All right, Matt from the future here. So I wanted to interject and let you know what happened here. So as I was looking at the new blade a little more closely and like looking for what the heck the problem was, because there was an intermittent like thunking and like aggressive grabbing thing that was happening, I started looking through the teeth, trying to find maybe one that was like goofy or something. And it turns out that one of the teeth, it's got like a full piece of carbide on it that hasn't been actually ground to the tooth shape. So like one tooth was way, way wider than every other tooth on there. So every single time the blade came around, it was dragging this huge tooth through the cut. So that was a funny realization. I've never seen that before. So I get these blades from bandsawbladesdirect.com. And I sent them an email with the picture of the blade. I'm like, this tooth is messed up. You know what's going on with that? And can you replace it? And the guy wrote back to me, Brian, he's like, I've never seen it before. I will send you a new one. So here's that one. So props to them. They made it super easy to get a new blade. They didn't sponsor this. They have no idea who I am, but it's nice when, you know, people take care of you. So let's put this new one on, proper one, and we'll see if that actually cuts the way I remember it's supposed to. Actually smoothly, and not a giant mess of a cut. We're gonna resaw here a piece of white oak into veneer for another video. I don't see any weird teeth anywhere, but we'll see. On the other blade too, it's like I was checking the weld, thinking like maybe the weld was off, but the weld was, you know, relatively straight or as straight as all the other ones I've seen. So like, that couldn't be it. I'm like, maybe it's like a weird tooth somewhere. And I'm spinning the blade around and around. And I'm like, wait a second, what is that? What is that weird tooth looking thing? Oh, it's a tooth that didn't get actually ground. That'll do it. That's better. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay, let's open this thing up and see what we got. So this opens this way, and this goes this way. I think that's going to be pretty darn cool. I have a 1-inch rail there and a 1-inch rail there and an inch over there. So there are the drawer fronts. I'm really happy with this because I had that curve in there. I wanted to keep that curvature as curvy as possible so that when they come together you have this sort of, I don't know, like musical instrument kind of thing going on. It kind of looks like, I don't know, like a cello body or something kind of coming together as it's kind of bellying out in either direction. One thing I want to point out, and it's a little bit of a a little poke at some folks, I guess. So as you can see, resawed this board in half. This is we're at 12 inches right now. I'm oversized. And after resawing, perfectly flat. No distortion, no weirdness, no whatever. It is so important to not rush the drawing process. So extremely important. If you rush it, this doesn't work that well. That's just my little self-righteous plug on drawing, because I'm always saying that. Don't rush the drawing process. It's going to work out better for the user if the process is not rushed, so the material has no stress in it at all, and you can do things like this. And people always tell me you can drive faster and faster and faster, but I don't think a lot of those people are actually users of the material. You might say, oh man, I see some cupping here. That's not cupping, that's just because I'm not at the full thickness there. It's not completely surfaced. So anyway, there's our drawer fronts. The next step for this is going to be to methodically cut them all to the correct size for the opening. So this is going to be just like if I'm doing a piece of furniture, I'm using that face frame as the actual opening. And we'll work through and set all of the gaps and get these sized perfectly to be their final size for that opening. And then we can look at cutting our rabbets for all of the, for the slides to work out well. That's sort of the area that I'm not too sure about, but we'll get there. I ended up at 7/8 of an inch thick, so a little under the inch that I was kind of aiming for, but I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal. We can make the rabbets adjust to make that those steps visually look okay. So there are the rabbets on the drawer front, and that is all just for clearance for the slides. So the rabbet along the side here, that is going to give clearance for the whole body of the mechanism when it's mounted into the case. The sides of the drawer can't touch the side of the case. They can't extend to the full extent of the cavity because this mounting bracket is in the way. So this step here allows a side, which, oh look, a side that I already made. That allows the side to sit back from the extent of the cavity and give somewhere for that body of the slide to actually go. So that's the story behind the side rabbet. You know, that one you don't really think about when you're doing the applied drawer front because the box is in the opening and then the front just kind of goes on there. That step is there. And that's what the clearance is on that. The clearance here along the bottom, that is for this part. This part of the slide, the bottom area here. When the drawer is fully in there, part of the box actually comes onto the slide area. So back when we did the pullouts and we did the two slide things, we needed a little notch in the front of the pullouts for this piece. The same thing applies here. So when the drawer is actually closed, there is somewhere for the slide to actually nest into, and it'll be back in there, something like that. Now, as far as the location of this groove, that groove is going to be offset a little bit, just like something like that, and that is going to give some clearance. So when the drawer side is on the front, it's going to give clearance for all the junk that's down here inside the slide. There is the soft close mechanism plunger thing. And then it also has these formed stiffener boss things here in the front. So all of that needs some clearance as well. So I believe that should make this work. And I know that makes it work because I already did the top two drawers to get to this point to figure out what all these sizes need to be. Well, the side and the bottom is pretty easy. The offset here, this is offset 5/8 of an inch versus the groove in this one. So that's what I ended up with. The magic number is 5/8. The one problem that you might have with this if you try this is that these slides have the up and down adjust, so you can move the drawer up and down in the opening. The default is all the way down. So ideally you make this offset too far because you can really only move your drawer up. So now we can get started on the actual joinery. It's gonna be just like a normal half-blend dovetail with a step on it. So this is going to be just like when I did the high boy drawers. This is exactly the same concept where you have a a rabbet or a step or whatever. So the first problem you're going to have with that is that if you're using a marking gauge and your fence is tall like this one, that's going to kind of mess things up. So you can do two things. You can always offset this fence even further and just ride along this little lip to get you in the right spot. Or if you happen to have a marking gauge that has something like that, where the fence is smaller, and you can reference just off of the inside of the rabbet here, that's going to be a little bit easier. Okay, so there's our scribe line. That's the thickness of the drawer side, and then that actually happens to be the same depth as this rabbet. It's 5/8. So this is set to be right there, so that when I went and scribed this line onto here, this distance is the depth of the rabbet, just like that. That's the only other thing you got to worry about, is making sure that these are the exact right length to go from here to the bottom of this rabbet. Like always, I'm using the groove to help align my parts top to bottom. And the nice thing here is that this rabbet here helps you align the in and out position as well. So like, I drop it on there and that's where it's gotta be. That's where it's gonna be. That's the perfect spot. So now comes the most, I guess, challenging or unique part of this style of dovetail, and that is the fact that you can't really get in here and mark the full tail, but it's not really that big a deal. I'll show you that in a second, but you need a pretty skinny, long marking knife so you don't get in here and damage the rabbet. And just do your best to trace around the tails. Just trying to get as much of the tail marked out as I can. So now I can use a chisel and set that in the knife line and just extend, and also kind of deepen the lines. So maybe if you don't have the best vision, this might be a good extra step for you regardless, to deepen that scribe line a little bit and make it a lot more noticeable. Okay. Now it's just kind of the same thing as normal half blinds or whatever. I'm going to give myself my square line down the face. And then I'm going to head to the drill press and knock out as much of this waste as I can. Okay, now I can get some more of this waste out of here, and I wanted to show this particular joint because it's going to show why, like, working with these crazy grains when you're doing stuff like this is different and unique. Because on this side we have nice straight grain, but as we get further and further over, we get more into this wild stuff, and it gets, you know, far more challenging. So I thought to make this one a little different, we're going to cover some of the different techniques and challenges of working with wild, crazy grain like this. And this is actually, I guess, I did a talk in 2016 at Woodworking in America, all about working with challenging grains like this. So that's kind of what this is inspired by, I guess. I think the name of that class was like Figured Wood, the Beauty and the Pain. So we're gonna go through the pain that it takes to have what I think is something beautiful. So that's sort of the rough cleanup work, and if you ever see me do half blinds before, normally at this point, I just chop the lines on here, on this face, put it up vertically in the vise, and just pair all of my, the sides of my pins to size. And with this rabbet on here, all you would have to do is just follow this lip and, you know, pare into. So basically just pare it to completion. But this, I can already tell the grain is running that way. Down here, the grain's running this way. Over here, the grain's running up that way, and it changes depending on where you're at in here. You can see the grain is actually curving. We know the grain's going that way because we see the curve here, but also it is curving down and running out. So if I were to be a little too aggressive over here, doing some chopping or paring, I will just blow this whole thing right out through the face, which I don't want to do. So one of the biggest things, or I guess first things with dealing with difficult grain like this is using the machines to do as much of the work as possible because they have a little bit easier time with this, more cuts per whatever. There's more cutting and less pieces or whatever you want to call it. So I got a router here. This is set up for, I guess, two things. First off, the depth here is the depth from the back face to the bottom of that rabbet. So it's going to clean up all the stuff here on the bottom. I also have a fence here so that I don't have to worry about coming through here and chopping all this. I figured while I'm doing the router thing anyway, I might as well save myself some chopping. Chopping's not glamorous, so this will allow me to just run the router directly to that scribe line, and basically everything except the pin area will be cleaned up and ready for the last little bit of hand tool work to get the pins down to the correct size. Now I just have a little bit of chopping to do into the corners. It's going to be a lot easier than paring it here in a second when I have it standing vertically in the vise. So I think this one's going to demonstrate pretty well the differences in working with different kinds of grain as you're doing hand tool, hand cut dovetail type stuff. Because down here we have pretty much perfectly straight grain stuff, but as we gradually work over, we get to far more challenging grains. And the first sort of rule we'll look at when we get over there is that your tools have to be sharp, like extremely sharp. So this chisel, I'm going to do this one real quick. This end one that's straight grain. You can see I'm pretty well flying through this without a whole lot of issue. So this would be more like what a normal half blind would be. You know, I don't even saw these, I just pair them right to the line normally. So I have my scribe line here. I can rest my chisel in the line. That gives me my plumb line or my square line. And then I can just pair back along the scribe line on the end grain to pair the pin to the correct size, and that's kind of it for cleanup. This isn't giving me any problems at all. Just flows right through there. That pin is done. Remember how painless this was when we get to the other end. So on this side, we're starting to get into a little bit of figure. There's a little band of figure that runs kind of this way. And that's like literally going right out this pin right here. So this one's going to be a little more challenging, but nothing like what's going to happen on the other end when we get to the crazy figure. So this one's giving me a little bit more pause or hesitation. It doesn't like this. So the strap is nearby. This is your best friend when you're doing this stuff. That is a lot easier now because it's sharper. But you can tell the difference between working with something straight grain and something that's crazier. If your chisel's not like literally on point, it's going to be much more difficult to actually pair this grain. So just a little bit of stropping made a huge difference. Okay, so there's that socket. If you want to, you can have it square nearby. You can check the pins to make sure you actually pair them square. And yeah, this is fine. I'm not that worried about my ability to follow the line. Oh, this one's kind of got a bulge on the bottom. Somebody apparently spoke too soon. All right, let's work down. Fun tip as we start working down is this is a lot easier to push through a cut than this. All of your force, this is a third of the size of this. So all the force it takes to, move this, you can get like 3 times as much force on this. So the smaller point, your force isn't distributed into as wide of an area, and you're able to actually push through a lot of stuff. The other thing too is if you're only working in a smaller area, if the grain's doing something weird, you're only trying to sever the grain in that small area, and the grain isn't trying to follow its way through some kind of winding path. You're actually able to sever it completely, and this big chisel isn't trying to cut and like maneuver itself through wavy grain that's doing weird stuff. And this grain here is already I thought this was gonna be a better example. I didn't look closely enough. I thought it was gonna be progressively more ridiculous, but I got that band of figure that's running right through right here. Like right there. Running just like this. So it's literally coming right through the pin that I'm working on. This next one looks like it should be, nope, never mind. There's some stuff on the front side. So it'll be easy towards the back side of the pin, but as we get to the narrow point, it's going to be more difficult of an area to work. The other thing I want to watch out for is if you're coming down like this, like I am right now, pay attention to what the grain's doing, because again, this could very easily cause this whole chunk to blow out the front, and you don't really want that. Unfortunately, this is a pretty large distance that larger than I'm used to, 1/4 inch. Normally I'm down around 1/8, and if you do any of that weird stuff and you blow out the front, it's super, super easy to do when you only have 1/8 of an inch of material. You get a little bit of grain run out and it wanders, and then the whole front comes out. Not fun. Not a good moment. Even this one's getting a little. But one thing is you'll really notice and appreciate a difference in like how dull your tools can be if you're working straight grain, and how like perfect they need to be if you're doing anything with a bunch of weird grain in it. As it makes you realize how much the grain steers the chisel as you're working, rather than just cutting it, because as you're going through paring across grain, the chisel's following the fibers, something like this. If the grain is straight, it's just following straight through, but if there's any kind of weirdness in there, it's going to want to do whatever. So your chisel has to be really sharp, because it's actually going to cut that stuff as you're going through, not just going right through the actual fibers of the grain. So as I come around here, this one's pretty obvious where the grain's going. You can see it's going this way. So if you were to think, oh, I can just come through here and I can just chop straight down through here, that's not going to happen. It's going to go like that, and you're going to lose this whole chunk of the pin. So that's why you can't just chop into the end grain like that, especially on something like this, where you can actually, the grain's going in that angle. So something to look for as you're going through here, and you can see on this next one how even crazier it is. It's going at an even steeper angle. It's down here like that, running this way in this direction, and then in this direction it's running this way. So it's kind of like going, where are we going here? Up and like forward this way. Now this one's all even crazier. This guy is going to have grain direction everywhere. So on this one, as I'm getting the waste bulked out, you can see I'm angling the chisel. And that is so that I am cutting directly across the end grain. That is the grain direction. So normally, if you were to have a board like this, and you just pare across the end like that, that's going directly across the end grain. But this board is in here. Imagine it in there like this. So in order for me to pare across the end grain, I have to angle my chisel to actually be at this weird angle to get directly across the end grain. That's going to be a lot easier than trying to pare in the middle there and actually sever the fibers, actually cut the fibers. This again is exploiting the fibers to get them out of there. And like I mentioned before, smaller contact area if I'm just using just a tiny bit of the corner of the chisel than trying to use the whole thing. That helps get a lot of this waste out of here, and then the smaller the amount of waste, the more control you'll have. Oof, this is nuts. It's not ready for that. Let's see if this helps. It's such a contrast because on normal like straight grain stuff, I would only have to strop maybe every drawer, every other drawer, something like that. Willie was dropping almost every single pin this time. Oh yeah, that's better. Not great, but better. Oh, go, 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 go. All right, one shaving. Okay. Just a little bit here still. And I'm going to check this one because I don't feel too confident about this. Yeah. Maybe too much on the bottom. Yep. Got a hump in it. There we go. That's better. Okay. Now, for the hardest one. Hardest one last. Well, I guess second hardest for the half pin, for this side at least, and then we'll go to the actual hardest one. All right, let's see. Oh. Alright. This one's actually not too bad so far. Okay. Cool. Let's see what this guy's got going. Oh. Yeah, this one's not going to be too happy. So we're using like all of the hand tool concepts and rules, I guess. Oh yeah. Baby bites. Chisels have to be super sharp. And most importantly, figure out what the grain's doing so you can best exploit its weaknesses. It's like, no, no thank you. I think I'll just stay attached. But thanks for the offer. Holy crap. All right. That was too big of a bite, apparently. Nope, that's not a good way to go. This way, I guess. Oh. Okay. So as we're coming like right through here, the grain is turning up. So if I pare straight down, I'm actually paring downhill with the grain, which is kind of weird to think about. It's like paring a miter, even though we're like straight up and down and square. The grain is oriented like it would if I was paring like a miter like that. Paring a miter. Let's say I had a miter on it and I was paring like this. That's what I'm doing here with this pin. It's just like this now. it's weird. So I will try and pare from the end grain to set this pin size. Let's see if that works. Kinda. We got a shaving. It's not going fast, but we got it. Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's see how far off we are, though. Really far off. Got a huge bulge in the bottom. touching down here on the bottom, but I'm open up top. So we got to do a little more down here. Let's see if I can get it like this. That's easier for me to at least feel the angle. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready for a little test fit. So there's going to be a few things I'll end up doing to the tailboard to guarantee the fit goes better. Like grab the one that actually goes here. That's the first trick. But before I start messing with the backside here, I just want to make sure that things are kind of heading in the right direction. And it feels a little tight here in the middle. Give it a good smack. Yeah, it's a little, I got a little bit of material I think right here. That pin's too fat. Maybe not. I don't really see any. This one maybe? It's definitely this one. Okay, that feels a lot better now. So I'm gonna start messing with this tailboard a bit. The main thing I'm gonna do is go over to the saw and just knock off like all the bottom area here, so I don't have any interference with the end grain of the tailboard interfering with this rabbet here. As if the rabbet's a little bit off, which it shouldn't be because I use the router, but if the router had, if the wall here had any kind of a weird angle on it, knocking this material out of here will give us some clearance. You don't have to worry about that back wall being perfect. It's also going to knock off this bottom corner, so if anything is screwed up at the very bottom here of the sockets, there's not going to be any interference there either. Taking off a lot of this material along the back here is going to help to guarantee that the tail fits tightly to the wall there. So when it goes through, you don't have a gap between the rabbet and the end of the tail. There's your final look. A little more challenging than normal half blinds, but I don't know, same kind of general process, just this rabbet makes it a little more of a nuisance, I guess, to get this done. Okay, here is this one. There is that guy right there. Okay, so with that one in place, that takes care of the half blinds. Now we just need a back, and oh, would you look at that? It's a back with some pins that are already cut in it, ready to go. I'm going to toss this in, and then that will be the last of the joinery. So there is the completed drawer box. All the joinery is done. And because I have very little confidence in myself, I already cut all the drawer bottoms so we can test these drawers out before gluing them up, make sure everything actually worked out correctly. I have the height adjusters up a little bit because I know I'm going to have to come up with the drawer box anyway because I overshot that bottom on purpose. And because I already know because I've installed the other ones. There it is. This one's going to need the tip adjusters because it's really far out of square, but otherwise it looks pretty good. I think these can get glued up and then off to the finishing shop. Okay, the drawers are back from getting their finish applied. This is the same exact finish as the rest of the island. If you want to see more in the finishing process, you can go check out those videos. But for those of you who haven't quite noticed just yet, the stock for the drawer fronts is sequential to the stock that I used for this end panel. And just like when I did these end panel board things, I wasn't sure if this was the right thing for this. So I had the same amount of hesitation using them again here, but I think it worked out pretty well yet again. And we have a little bit more of a hidden detail that these drawers and these panels are sequential and matching. So now these just need some bottoms slipped in and then they can go into the island for good. So that takes care of the drawers. It's kind of a different way of doing things. At least that keeps it somewhat interesting for me. And I'm actually kind of happy with the way that these worked out with the continuous grain and book matches thing going on. I think it's pretty slick. These slides, just like every other slide in this kitchen, still need to be adjusted. That's kind of the downside using slides, is that like almost always something has to be adjusted. But whatever. With the drawers out of the way, now we can get started on making the door, which is going to go right here. So we're going to start on making the frame for that door first, and before I get into it, I'm going to run through this pretty quickly because you've already seen me make the same exact style of door. We made all the doors that are in here already. The difference here is this one is going to be wood, and the big difference with the frame, or the most exciting thing about the frame, the most interesting part about the frame, is that we're going to get the rail and style stock out of these two offcuts. These were the pieces that came from right here. So those offcuts are going to become the door frame for over there. Resaw this in half, and that'll become two pieces. We'll have four pieces when we do both of them. That'll be our rail and style stock. And I'll just run through and do all of the joinery and construction exactly the same as the other doors. And once the frame is constructed, we'll take a look at finding an interesting piece of stock for the panel. Okay, just like all of the other maple frames, there is the white oak frame for the door. Nice, fun, easy process to make those mitered Morrison tenon bead things. So from here, let's go find something interesting to put in the panel hole besides my beautiful face. And this is the slab that I found that we're going to use. It's got a nice piece of crotch down there, so we're going to use that for the panel. This guy is from the Sawmill video, sawing logs from around my new neighborhood. This tree, or whatever part of this tree, I believe it got storm damaged, and my neighbor had, cut it up into chunks and offered them to me. And this is kind of one of the first, I think it was like one of the first Sawmill videos that we did here on the new property. So this tree or log or whatever came from like 2 doors down, so not even that far from here. And I think it's going to be pretty cool, highlighted inside that frame in the kitchen. So this I brought in here, I dug out and I brought in here maybe 3 weeks ago. I was getting a reading of about 14, 15% or so. And today, what are we getting? Today we're getting 12s. So what I'm going to do today is figure out where I want my panel to end up in here. We will rough cut that chunk out of here, and we'll resaw it to oversized thickness, and that'll be, get it thinner so it'll dry faster and get down to equilibrium sooner. And then whenever that happens, I can finish up this door panel and keep on going through with all of this. So kind of thinking, so I could do something like that and have it, basically this side have straight gray and this side's got grain run out. That's kind of an interesting look. I can have it pretty well centered so the crotch figure goes straight down through the middle. That's kind of cool too. I think that might be a little too crazy. Kind of leaning towards sort of a centered-ish look. Kind of go into bark down here, so there's not a whole lot of room there, but that pretty much encompasses all of the figure that we're going to have. Maybe something in this kind of area, something right there. There's something in there. We got this little burl formation going on there, which is kind of cool. Yeah, let's go with that. We'll cut this a little oversized, and then we'll resaw it a little bit to get it down to thickness, and then we'll come back to this in a few weeks. It's been, I think, 3 weeks now, and we're getting, what are we getting here? No readings. I got a 4 there for a second. 5s. Let me check the other side. Around some of the epoxy and stuff. I'm getting 8, 9, 7, 4, 7. So kind of all over the place. So this is a good time to talk about moisture meters. You got to be smarter than your moisture meter, or maybe not smarter than your moisture meter, but you have to understand what this thing is telling you. This one specifically is a scanning meter. It's going to give you an average the moisture content down to the scanning depth, which for this one is 3/4 of an inch. So we know that as wood is drying or absorbing moisture, as it's trying to find equilibrium, it's going to be a gradient. There is going to be more or less moisture in the middle down the surface. So this thing tells you an average of what's in the middle versus what's on the surface. It's an average of that gradient. If you want an actual like spot meter, like I want to know the moisture content on the surface, or I want to know the moisture content right in the core, you can use one of these style meters with the pins on there, and this will tell you the moisture content right at whatever the depth is that you get those pins set to. So if I take this thing and stick it on the surface, this is far down as I can shove this thing, I'm not even getting a reading. So my surface moisture is below whatever this thing can read, which is 5%. So one other little thing about this is we're trying to get to equilibrium. We got to know what equilibrium is. So currently right now in the shop at room temperature, we have a relative humidity of 10%, and a just general way to get to the equilibrium moisture content number is to divide relative humidity by 5, and that'll give you your ballpark or really close equilibrium moisture content. So in this case, mid-January in Minnesota, 10% relative humidity indoors at room temperature. The equilibrium moisture content we're looking for is 2. So we're not there yet. I don't really expect it to be quite that close to it, but I don't feel comfortable with putting a moisture meter on here and it's saying 9. So this thing still has some way to go, even though it has come down quite a bit. So I think today I'm just going to go through and skim this down a little bit. We're still pretty over thickness. We'll take some more thickness out of here, get it back into flat, and we'll stick it back on the bench here to continue drying for at least another week. So that's a little bit about drying, I guess. It's always funny to me when people tell me that it's impossible to air dry below like 12 or 10%. You absolutely can. You just have to have the correct conditions. And wintertime here is a great time to get even below 4. So what did we just do? We just removed all of the drier outside stuff, leaving more of the core wood in place. So this side was giving us, what, like 7s and 8s. Now we've got 9s, we got 10s over here. That's a 10, 9, 10, 8, 7. So this side was giving us like nothing, no readings. Now we're up at 5s, 9s. There's a 10 right there, 9.8. So not quite there yet. We're gonna let this one sit and dry some more, but look how cool this figure is. That was good. So I'll see you in, I don't know, a week or something. Okay, I'm kind of losing track of time, but I think it's been 3 weeks. I'm seeing 4s and 5s. For the most part, so this is good to go. It's close enough. We can get started on actually making this into a door panel. But I figured since we're talking about drawing wood and stuff, I wanted to touch on one last little concept or misconception, I think. I think most people think wood drawing is linear like this, where your moisture content drops linearly over time. But in reality, this graph looks more like this. So in the beginning, you can lose a lot of moisture in a short amount of time. So if you want it to go from, you want it to change 2% right here, that's only this amount of time. But if you want it to change 2% down here somewhere, from here to here, let's say, that is, that amount of time. So it's not linear. The drier it gets, the slower it dries. Okay, let's go make a door. So there we go, another item or items crossed off the list, a little bit more of a fun, exciting woodworkery adventure of things with the drawers that are one piece fronts, which I think actually works out pretty nicely. And then this door, I'm really happy with this. I think it really ties things together really nicely. And the crotch figure is like 100% my own personality, as is a lot of this other stuff. But this is all me, and this is, I guess, it's not something you can just go out and buy a cabinet like this, because most people will be like, why the hell would you want a crotch panel on your kitchen island? But that's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I get. So very, very happy with this. And the tree came from across the street, so that's even cooler. Well, I mean, this tree came from across the city. This tree came from across the street. It's all got a story. I love that. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you, as always, for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments on the island, anything in the kitchen, anything back in the shop, or whatever, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking.